Please. Recording in progress. Welcome to Black Girl from Eugene. I am Aisha Elliott. I am live. Actually, this is not live, it's pre recorded on June 18th for Sunday, Father's Day, June 20th here in the United States. So I've decided to pre record with my very distinguished guests. And I am also simulcasting on 97.3 local radio station. So thank you so much. If you are watching the video, you can also find the audio on all podcast platforms. So check me out there. And hopefully, I saw you yesterday at the Juneteenth celebration and watch for my show coming up to explain or talk about how the Juneteenth celebration went down and my reaction to all of that. So we're going to get started and we're going to try to keep this conversation to like 45 minutes to an hour. Let's see if we can do it. I don't know because we have such good stuff to talk about. As promised, I have two wonderful people coming from the Hawaii Islands to talk about colonization with me. If y'all have been following my podcast, you know I was just in Hawaii for about a month, and every time I go back, I'm always looking at how the island has changed and how people have come through, and the spirit of the island is changing, and just the feeling of the water is changing. And so the more that I feel it, and the more that I talk about it, to myself and my sister and my family, I'm just super blessed and super happy to find two folks who are willing to come on my show. And now you guys are my friends. You have no idea. We're besties. So, so y'all have to come on my show and talk to me about this, because you don't just bump into people who want to be like, oh yeah, and colonization. So I am super happy and super blessed to have y'all both on the show. So I have Charne and I have Kenani, who are both on Oahu right now. And we are going to get right into it, and we're going to be talking about colonization. But first, before we get started, hey y'all, how you doing?
Hi, doing good. Thanks for having us.
I'm so glad you guys are here. I'm so happy you were here. So y'all have, let me tell you first, I met Charne when I went to go get electrolysis. I'm telling my secrets. I went to go get electrolysis done, and we just started talking about spirituality. And you know how chemistry just works, and you're like, oh wait, hold on, you need to come on my podcast. I need to know you, like exchange phone numbers. So within that hour session, which was fantastic, by the way. You need to plug your place when we get off here so people know where to come see you. I was like, you know what, we need to have you on. And then Charne was like, I have somebody else who can join our conversation who will be fire for the conversation. And this is how we meet Kenani. And now, as I understand it, you actually speak Hawaiian, fluently Hawaiian, and you are indigenous to Hawaii. Is that right?
Yes. So I went to Hawaiian immersion
Uh-huh.
and I continued my education. So Hawaiian immersion is when you actually learn how to read and write in Hawaiian first and then English. So I went to school for it for about 11 years. Yeah.
Nice. Okay, and Charne, what is your background?
Well, I was born and raised in Hawaii.
Mhm.
So I know Kenani from my hometown, Kaneohe.
Mhm.
And we met in high school from one of my childhood friends. And that's basically how Kenani and I connected. And then we had the passion of she still has a great passion. This is her life path, but like to grow food for the community.
Oh.
So like her and I started planting together.
Yeah.
like and then I decided to kind of take a different path and go to school for acupuncture and traditional Chinese medicine, so for herbs. So acupuncture and herbs. So I feel that her passion is in feeding the community. My passion is in healing the community. So that is kind of what paths we're kind of on right now. But we still have we still have things that we do in the community together as well. So
That's amazing. I'm thinking like you're feeding the community, you're healing the community. I'm educating the community. Like this is how the heart works. This is how the heart work works, right? This is how mind and heart works. Okay, so our conversation was about colonization. And now, before I push record because I was late, Charne was like breaking it down, but then she was like, hold on, we gotta let Kenani get in on it. So tell me your history. Like, tell me what's going, like, just so we can just jump right into it. Like I was saying at the beginning, when I come to Hawaii now, I mean, I don't pretend to, I'm not obviously indigenous to Hawaii at all, but the way that my family has always moved around the world is that we're very conscious um of our space, right? And we're very conscious of how we take up space and the energy that we spend. And we're always looking for the natural indigenous way that people do the things they do wherever we are. And because because I'm Black, I know how anti-Blackness is all around the world, right? But my viewpoint my perspective is very multicultural. So wherever I'm at, I'm always looking for other brown people. I don't even care what the ethnic group is. It's other brown people. I'm always like, let's connect, let's connect, let's connect. How do we work together? And so for me, it's about energy. And when I went to Hawaii, like the more and more as I've gone in the years have passed, it's changing. Like the energy there is changing, right? And I'm just noticing I see a lot less indigenous Hawaiian folks. I see a lot less people who, and we live on the west side. We live in Makaha. I see more people who are changing the way the island feels than actually gaining and bringing to it. So I want y'all to speak on it. I want you to see what is your impression? What's happening? Like what do you see and do and feel and all of that good stuff?
Kanan, do you want to take it away?
So the foundation of it is being priced out of our home. The highest population of homelessness is Native Hawaiians. When you look at statistics at like who's in jails, even schooling and education, we're at the bottom of the totem pole. So it's not a surprise. And I think that goes across the board in every indigenous place. Because I went to school in New Zealand and I studied there, and it's the same exact story that happened there. I think the fascinating thing about Hawaii is that white people especially don't everywhere in the world they kind of dominate, but not here in Hawaii. Like they're treated as second class. Mm-hmm. Do I believe it's pono or right? No, not necessarily. But they're moving here in drones. And so that's what's changing the dynamics. Because I had this conversation with like the word aloha, right? Love, care, all of us, and how it's slowly dying. That's what my friend had argued. And I told him that if we live in that mindset of scarcity, then we're never going to be able to back what we have. But if we have the opportunity to teach aloha, then we'll be in abundance. So no, you're definitely right. There's a huge shift in what's happening here. And it's because there aren't natives. I mean, you know, they're not here to teach. A lot of them moved to the 9th island, which is Vegas, because it's cheaper.
Right.
Yeah.
He said the 9th island is Vegas. That's hilarious.
Right. Yeah.
So when you're saying, you know, like, okay, so for me, when I'm hearing you talking like aloha and you have to teach in the abundance, I agree. And then I feel like, Charne, did we talk about like haole, and you were talking about the differences of what it means to come to the island and
yeah,
right?
So like you can be of any type of background of ethnicity and color, right? When you start to not accept our values of the way that we live and live that way, that is considered haole, mm-hmm. You know. But when you accept and embrace our culture and the way that we live and practice it every day, you are as Hawaiian, local. Mm-hmm. Well, not necessarily local, but Hawaiian, because you're right. Practicing the values of what our foundation is, you know. And so that is something that is very interesting because I think that a lot of Native cultures can agree on this, in which we all have a foundation of our beliefs, and they were westernized, and in that it shifted the way that people lived in kind of harmony. You know, we don't need beliefs to be a better culture. That's not a goal of ours. Our goal is for all of our people to thrive and flourish in what they, Na'au and souls are meant to do on this earth realm, here. And nurturing that in the culture is something that was very important to all of us before we were westernized, before we were on, standardized curve of education. Like, what the hell is that? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I, so haules are considered people that don't accept the values or practice the foundation and roots of what our original culture was built on.
So
and then correct me if I'm wrong, or you have any input as well.
No, I think you said it fabulously.
Thank you.
I know you mentioned you said Na'au. Is that what you mentioned?
Na'au, yeah, is your gut, is your intuition, is what you're led to.
Right.
So,
and Na'au being that, this is the part that comes from my oppressed background, right? Like the oppression of Black and brown people. And I literally just generalize Black and brown people, just everybody who's having this marginalized experience with the diaspora of colonization, right? So like you said, everywhere we go, the experience is different. But the experience is different, but the oppression is the same, right? It's this westernized colonization, this white, just Eurocentric point of view. So when people are coming to the island, and like what you mentioned, Kenani, it's like they're buying the island from underneath you, right? So how, with that mindset, just in itself of like, I'm gonna come to Hawaii, I'm gonna buy land, and I'm gonna put my roots here. Just in that gesture, where is the Na'au? Like, where is the soul connection? Where is the breath that is in aloha? How would you, like, as folks who live there, like, be able to, I mean, how can you discern? You know what I mean? Like, is it just people who, like you said, they come in droves? And whenever I see white folks in droves, I'm like, oh crap, pack your shit up. Like, we got to get out of, like, I mean, 'cause I'm like, oh, they're coming. You know what I mean? And so, like, how do you discern?
I think along with, I think intention is something that lacks practice a lot of the time. So my intention of, my life is to help others heal. And with that, you attract two different types of people, one that want to do the work and one that wants you to do the work for them.
Okay. Right? Oh my God, say it again.
So for me personally, I always naturally know I don't need to discern anything, because intention to help people heal themselves. So naturally, the cycle of life weeds out not your people. You know what I mean? So if they want you to heal them and they don't want to heal themselves, for me, I know that they won't come back to see me more than a few times, because that it's just the way that I intend to practice my medicine, and so that is something that I don't necessarily need to discern or distinguish right away, because I feel it naturally, intention that will attract people. Of course, you're going to come into contact with, different intentions, but whether or not it sticks with you and your tribe, that's a different story, right? Yeah. So I think that having this type of dialogue with you, Kenani, along with many other people that you get to talk to, is something you intend to do to educate, right? So you're attracting a tribe, a tribe in which wants to be educated, flourish, and evolve into something more than just what we know the West way of colonized way of living, which is for power, you know, and individualism. And that's just not how the world should go around. like
The world didn't go around like that until this. And then with this is creating such a vacuum of disproportionate power and value that it's completely unbalanced. I mean, look at the earth, look at the oceans, look at how it's not balanced. And when I'm listening to everything that you're saying, and I'm just thinking about like when white folks don't think, I mean, when you said there are two people, I was like, speak on it, because the truth of it is that there's a spiritual connection to people and the land, right? And when it becomes about power and it comes about money, immediately those two things, neither one of those things have anything to do with spirituality. That will take you far in the other direction, right? You'll be like about face, like your back will be to spiritual growth, your back will be to human connection, if that is where, you know, if that's what you're doing, if that's where you're how you come about. So I guess when I come in and people say, oh, the way of life in Hawaii, this is like, oh, the way of life. What is it? I mean, what would you expect, and as what would you consider respectful when someone comes to the island and wants to be a part of Hawaii in a way that is respectful of how the land grows and how the indigenous people can thrive there?
Can
Okay,
I?
so I kind of have like a long tangent. Okay, so bear with me.
Yeah, do it.
Chacha and I, we had this conversation about I think where you at you're at some kind of hotel and you're educating these group of transplants, we'll just call them that, about they're asking about wealth. And I was just the foundation of the Hawaiian community isn't based on how much personal wealth that you can gain. It's based upon what it is that you contribute back to the community as a whole. That is how we judge you as a person and your character. And so to give you a little bit more context, so the Hawaiian Kingdom was established and every single aspect of their kingdom, people were cared for. So we have a bunch of trust, right? So then we have Bishop Estates, which is Kamehameha Schools. She's the largest landowner. That's to educate children. They with Queen, that was for that was during the time Chacha had mentioned it, when they brought leprosy and illnesses. Our people were dying at a rapid rate. So the Ali'is created a hospital. In addition to that, they have Hawaiian Homes, which was made by Prince Kuhio. So his lands were entrusted to house Hawaiians. In addition to that, we have the Queen Liliuokalani Children's Trust Fund, which those funds goes towards children. And they have so many other trusts. So what I'm getting to is that although our ali'i had so much wealth, they knew that they were nothing without their people. And the fascinating thing about them is that when you read the wills that they had left behind, they were never exclusive. So preference was given to Native Hawaiians, but they let everyone else in on the wealth. And there's a huge discrepancy in the way that they ran a kingdom. And when you're looking at what's happening to not just Native Hawaiians, but the community, what's going on. And it's very disturbing when you take a look at the changes and how, I'm going to call it out, the American government fucking come at me. Like, they don't give fucks, you know? They don't care. Their nation was built on the backs of slaves. And it's like, who are you?
Right.
Who are you? Yeah. So that was my little tangent.
Oh, you're good. Oh, you're good. You're good. No.
So by the way, I'm Chacha. So all my friends call me that. You are more than welcome to call me that. But Kenani, one of Kenani's goals is to start to put a system in place tourists to come because Hawaii thrives on tourism as one of the makers of our economy, right? And with that, we have to bridge the gap between the extremes of no, we don't want these people here to, but we have to because we're, we're on our knees for our economy to be sustained, right? So one of the things that Kanans, can I share this?
Yes, please.
Okay,
Please share it with
great.
the world.
Yeah. So one of the things Kanani is wanting to do is have programs for tourists to participate in, become educated in the Hawaiian culture, and also do really awesome activities that can be offered as well. So you volunteer your time to get types of like different activities. Am I explaining this right, Kanani? Can you elaborate for me?
So the effort is to make just an app where tourists can, right, because tourists, like Chacha was saying, a lot of locals get upset. So if I'm not mistaken, in 2018, you can check me, every one local, there were 10 tourists. So we're outnumbered in our own homeland.
Okay, for how many locals there were, how many tourists?
So for every one local, there's 10 tourists. So
Exactly.
we're outnumbered in our own homeland. And what people don't understand is you can give me billions of dollars, but you can never replace my fresh water. That's life. And people don't understand that concept. So how do you make them understand that? And I think it's all about marketing. Like, we can't market it as who the hell wants to like go on vacation and volunteer. So like, so for instance, one of the hot topics in the Hawaiian community is Maunawili Falls. So Maunawili Falls is overrun by like hundreds, perhaps even thousands of tourists who go there. My thing is having a nonprofit, not necessarily there, but having an app that you can divert tourists to, that allows you connections with all of these nonprofits that have a greater goal of malama'aina, or caring for the land. And tourists are not bad people. They really aren't. They're just not given the opportunity to do good, because people, right, history is written by its victors. That's bottom line. And right now, the victors are these Fortune 500 companies. They're writing our history. So I think it's like my kuleana, or my responsibility, to create these opportunities, right? So we're going to market it like, hey, you see this beautiful pond? You can swim in it if you volunteer like 5 hours. And it's not, it's just diverting people towards what's good. And like Chacha taught me, always leading with the heart, with love.
Yeah, okay, look, I'm listening to you guys and I'm like, y'all are so sweet. And I'm thinking to myself, like, I know, let me put it this way. I don't know as many tourists that come through the Hawaii Islands, Oahu particularly, who are looking to give back. Like, I'm gonna say half of one of those 10 people are there to give back, right? In my experience of white folks and the haole experience, the idea, and how I understood, how I understand it, is that they're not there for you. They're not there to connect, right? They're there to utilize what they believe, because they've spent their money, they have a right to, right? So being that people are under the illusion that Hawaii is actually a state of the United States, like the whole idea of a occupied island is not common knowledge, and how it was taken over is also not common knowledge. And to understand that the Hawaii Islands is actually a sovereign space and had rulership, right? So money is power. They come in and they because they have more money. Like 1 to every 10, right? One and I'm saying this, and I say white people, I'm not talking about like the people individual. I know a lot of very beautiful, lovely white folks. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
Right.
the representation of white supremacist culture coming through in a colonized mindset, meaning that I have money, which means my power matters, my comfort matters, my individualistic idea of who I am because I earned it matters, my defensiveness when you ask me about it matters. Like all of these things that support white supremacist culture comes with that money. And
Right.
so, and because the government there is literally taken over, not that it's being ran, but is taken over by the Republican United States, like in the Hawaii. How do you see in that? Because I think the idea is beautiful, but how do you see it being like protective, right? Like it feels like a gesture in which in your culture, like in the way that you've described your culture, is what's most beautiful, right? It's like a gesture for you to be right. Like it's like I'm offering you to do the right thing here, right? Right.
Well, I think education is one of the goals of this program. And tourists don't understand that our vaiwai, our fresh water, all comes from the mountains. We don't have any other resource besides natural water. And our system is like, for all of our fresh water to be filtered through, all it takes, honestly, I want to say like 30 years before it gets to, how long does it take, Kanans?
Yeah, about
30 years
20 to seep through the rocks, but
seep through
I
the
mean it
rocks,
goes
but
through
to our
right,
pipes then.
right.
Yeah,
Yep.
it takes about 30 years for that water that's coming out of my sink right now to nourish me. So that is something that I don't think a lot of people understand, and they take for granted, right? So and for me personally, it's like people don't have to participate in these programs, but the benefits and implementing, if they want to do these hikes to tread our land that actually produces our fresh water naturally,
Right.
so they can stay in Waikiki all they want and
Okay.
you know what I mean, and not go participate in the beauty of why they come here for like paradise. But
Right.
I understand what you're saying, in Aisha, in that it's like where's the incentive, right? Because money is power, right? So for us, what is for us,
What is
that
power? You broke up.
water,
Yeah.
vai, fresh water,
Bye-bye.
our ahupua'as were based on that system. They were all based on where the fresh water came down from the mountains in abundance, so we can create our communities around that, and where it ran out to the kai, the salt water, and with that whole system is what fed the ahupua'as. So
And they're building though. They're building on those mountains.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I kind of want to, I want to bring it back because it's super, and I believe it's all in the marketing strategy. So something like I study a lot of Fortune 500 companies because I'm like, those who did us wrong are dead, but the ones who are doing us wrong now are the Fortune 500 companies. Those are the motherfuckers like up our ass. So anyways, but no, so their rule of thumb is 80-20. So 80% of their time should be spent on marketing and only 20% towards executing their entire. So I believe, because you're right, like there's no incentive for tourists to be like, oh, I'm gonna come to this beautiful place. Yeah, but what they don't understand is that a lot of nonprofits have resources that are programmable, right? So I had this conversation with one of my friends. He was like, how are you gonna convince like a whole population to go to these places because I don't want to go. And I told him it's about marketing. It's not community service, they're activities. And so I reminded him of the time that he went to Thailand. And so he refused to ride the elephants because of the way that they're treated and abused.
Mm-hmm.
So he actually went to a sanctuary and paid $300 to wash an elephant. And I told him, you see, it's all about the marketing. It's convincing them that, yeah, it's beautiful, you can, but you got to put in the work. And we're not really going to tell them like working in the lo'i is actually work. It's, you know, so I think it's honestly manipulation into doing what's right. I start being like clear and cut, girl, because you're right.
Right? No, I love it because I think, you know, when I went, okay, so that's one thing I have in as I've gotten older. Like when I lived in Hawaii before, I was like, I'm not doing any touristy shit because I'm not participating. Like, you're not catching me in Hanauma Bay, right? Like, I'm not doing it. But then I was like, if nobody's at Hanauma Bay who says like, don't stop fucking touching the honu, like that, like if no one's there to say that, like then what happens, right? So then people like work there and they can't really say nothing. So then I thought, well, maybe I should, not that. So I was like torn, right? Because I don't want to give money to the idea that sell Hanauma Bay to this. It's so gross how many people go and just like blah all over it and then leave and they don't have any consequence. They don't try to clean it up. They leave their stuff all over the, like they don't think about it. They're like, oh, I got a picture with the honu, ooh, and they're like, you know, all over it's like, to me, it's not even just the island. Like I lived in Central America. It's the same thing for me there. Like I look at it and be like, what, do you do that at home? Like, is that how you act at home? Right. And then it's not like they don't do that at home. They would never do that at home. So they feel like this entitlement to something that isn't ever and never could really be theirs. And so when I look at it, I think, okay, so I go to Hanauma Bay, I'm a part of the tourist crowd. Now I feel guilty. And then I'm like, okay, now I need to be like, make sure everyone's leaving. I'm picking up other people's bags and I'm picking up other people's junk. And then I'm like, okay, I feel better that I was here. But so to have your program be something that educates crowds of people like before they can participate, you know, I think it's a beautiful idea. I immediately think, because I'm always like, okay, what's the barrier, right? So as soon as I think about that, I'm like, how do we get that guy or that woman who is paying, you know, the door person $500 to just kind of get around it, or like, I'll pay this person to do it. Can I just donate, you know, to another, you know, sanction of somebody to clean it and blah, blah, blah. You know, I'm trying to find like the barrier. And in Hawaii, it's the money. You know what I mean? It's always like the dollar bill. If you have the higher dollar bill, you get what you want. And with the native folks being like you said, the highest unhoused population, how is that possible? And then you get people coming in, oh, I'm buying land so I can do a massage retreat or a yoga retreat or this thing. And there's no Hawaiian who has any piece of the land that, I mean, what are you doing? And they think because, girl, look, I'm already on a tangent. Y'all have to stop me. Y'all will get me going. I'm like,
because this is the real world we live in, right? And so like obviously it's a systemic problem that we have here.
Yeah.
And we're talking about huge shifts that need to be implemented. And this has been going on since we could remember. The currency, the type of currency we have in place now is what will always buy you the top dollar of what you want, right? Mm-hmm. So, and if you don't have that, you will suffer. It's like a survival of the fittest type of that we have. And for us to implement something, I think that talking about this is exactly what we need to continue to do openly. And I think that for me personally, I don't want to I want to implement these things, start to talk about these things, because our future, our children are what are going to be putting it in place, you know, and they're the ones that are going to be suffering ultimately if they're not, you know, if they don't continue to hear things that changed, shifted. So I was just having this conversation with my dad yesterday, and I was just like, you know, like him and I have very different views about our system. And at the end of the day, I don't know what system would be good for us to shift to. All I know is that we all as individuals need to be accountable and hold our higher ups accountable as well. You know, and we all have different views, but I know that one of the common goals for everybody with their different views is for all of us to live a good life.
Right. Right.
You know,
Yeah.
that that is something very important to talk about with different views, because we can have very opposing views to one another, but we can still hear one another out, and that we all want the same thing, which is living a good life for not just me, but for everybody, you know? And I don't know how that is going to be done. I don't know, but all I know is that we have this conversation right here and right now that can plant the seeds in others to have the same type of dialogue with other people, you know.
Yeah.
This is where the you know, the ideas, the imagination starts to come to play. So,
you know, I think it's like very much I love very much the aloha that comes along with the Hawaii culture, because it is so pure and it's so genuine. There really isn't anything else to it but actual love and respect, right? And I feel like the cynic in the group. I feel like I feel like I'm like,
oh,
yeah, they're not that nice. But I mean, but at the
they're
same
not.
time,
Here, they're not. A lot of people are out for them own selves, right?
yeah, it's
And
individualistic culture. Like
yes,
it's just like
absolutely, absolutely. But you know, I am only one person living here in this earth realm right now, you
yeah,
know, and Kenani is the only one person, you're only one person, but we're all having a conversation of what we want for everybody else.
straight up true. Honestly, like 100. I mean, because this is why I educate. I do believe, and people tell me all the time, you hold white people's hands like too much. That's what they say. And I say, look, I'm like, look, there's not a lie there. But at the same time, and also, I feel as a Black woman, I am healed from the oppression. I understand it. I overstand it. I recognize it, and I can boundary myself around it. I choose, and I understand what I'm choosing, and I understand what I'm withdrawing. And when I get white culture oppressing at this point in my life, it took me 43 years to get here. It really was a space of true healing for me to look. It starts to become like the Matrix. It's like they're over here doing this thing, and I'm over here either reacting to it or thriving to my own center space. And in my center space of self, I then can feed others, right? And the monsters are on the outside, like looking at me, trying to feed on this aura. But that's how I see it. It's like this: the people who are unhealed, the people who are still suffering, the people who are the oppression is still deep in their heart and connected to their every single day. Like they're still fighting. And the truth of it is that the don't get me wrong, when people are listening to this, the fight is necessary. We need people out there with the fight, right?
Yes.
But but there's also a space of of a conversation that comes down with a different intention. And this is with how I educate. And people say, oh, you hold these white folks' hand, is because I don't see them as not harmed, right? Even in their privilege, the living that level of ignorance, I don't see as bliss, right? There's a
Right.
level of potential they are completely ignorant to. And that to me is super sad, actually. You know what I mean? Like, could you imagine living life like not liking a whole race of people just because like that level of heaviness that you walk into someone else's land and see them hungry and be like, yeah, that's terrible. Take a picture and go back like, what is happening? And for me, that's what I look at that as a level of mental health deprivation, a disconnect, cognitive like dissonance that needs doesn't need to actually be it needs to be helped. You know what I mean? And that's how and this is very new. Because you talked to me 5 years ago, I'd have been like, burn it down, right? But now, I'm like, okay, hold on. Let me think about this in a more evolved way where I'm not actually still triggered. You know what I mean? And so I say all that to appreciate the aloha you are displaying in the idea of this nonprofit, because that's where you're coming from. You're trying to speak. What I hear is that you're trying to speak to the higher self in people. Like, do better than where you're at right now. And maybe while your hand is in the land, you might find that better. You know what I mean? You might see it. So I hear you. That's how I hear the aloha in your idea, is like, you're trying to connect these folks to something that's bigger than them.
Mm-hmm. I think it starts with intent, a positive mind, and really moving towards creating the world that you want to live in. Because I'm a big fan of Dolores Cannon. I'm gonna drop her name. So if you're like ever lost, go check out her stuff on YouTube. But she writes, like, you are the director, the writer, the creator of your story. You write your narrative. And you can let others, you pick the leading roles in your life, right? Because we're all in this meat suit right now. And our souls are eternal souls. We're just living the temporary human life.
Right.
And I think it's all just a test of your I want to say contract. Like, and because you're talking about like those who live in bliss, I learned not to be offended by their reaction, but to more understand their journey to healing.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I take a look back, and I started to look at everyone as like their children, right? Because you said they're unhealed.
Yeah.
And when I put on those pair of glasses, I'm able to see more and to shed the meat suit that we're wearing, really into what has this child not healed. And it really helps me to create the world that I want to live in. And I wholeheartedly believe that you are a product of your environment. So if we can create the livable and loving environment, it'll happen. It'll take time. And I think that if we weren't born with these struggles, knock on wood, life would be so boring. People would be too perfect,
Yeah,
like,
definitely. And I also I think that the ego has a lot to do with this type of mental health crisis I'm talking about. Right? Like our ego is so encompassed in who I am, which I don't even know who I am. I do know who I am, but I know what my higher conscious is, which is everything I would not say who I am when in an argument, when I get heated, when my ego overtakes me and has only, one view, one blind side. So I think that it's very important for us to also talk the swallowing the ego, having compassion, having empathy, because that goes a long, long way. What you're saying, I just love this conversation so much. And you know what? All three of us are women, and that is the type of energy we're moving into in this world. I don't know how quickly we are going to, but we're shifting. And I know that that's creating a lot of friction as well in this type of society right now. And that's why the dark and light are at a lot of different energy pools, right? And so there's a lot of things that are going to be happening up in time, and we all, for me, I believe we all chose to come back here, right now, to be a part of it, to shift it, to be one individual person, but yet all, because we all are the same. And we're not, but we are.
Yeah, no, oh my God. It's like same, but different, right? That's exactly what
Yes.
people was saying. You know, I'm loving this conversation too. I hate that I'm like, we should have done a longer time frame. But I'm wondering, I wonder how many people who are listening, like, no matter what your ethnicity is, no matter what your cultural background is, or indigenous background is, I wonder if people are surprised about the level of understanding the Hawaii way is actually spiritual. When people come in and out of Hawaii and not think of this at all, right? They have this, oh, there's something about Hawaii. Oh, there's something about the water. There's something about and this is what it's about, right? And so you cannot buy this. Like, this requires a moment of grounding. It requires more than a moment of being present. It requires understanding your privilege and checking out and your ego, privilege, all of those things, and being present in what Hawaii is actually offering you. And what Hawaii is actually offering you is a spiritual experience, honestly, with yourself. And so I wonder, because people are so like, the surf culture. And I want to say, I want to air quote that shit, because that is different for other people, right? And so I know in the Hawaii culture, surfing is one thing, and then there's this thing that happens now, right? Which is not the same. But one, of course, is one is the poster boy, and then one is like what actually it is. So I know Kenani, and of course, Charne, if you can too. I'd love to talk to people, because, when people go to Hawaii, they go for one or two things. They go for surfing or for romance. Like, this is what it is, right? Or, to buy a piece of land and make it into like I don't know. I won't get started. I'm so pissed about all of that. So I swear to God, I'm like, it's a tangent for me. I can't, oh, I'm starting a yoga retreat. Oh, I just want to smack you. So, okay. So this is the thing, right? So I would love for you to speak on, I would love for you to speak on the surf culture, like what it really means. Cause I know that's a popular attraction for people who are coming to Hawaii. Like I said, the romance and the whole, and then there's the people who are like hiking and taking plants and doing all kinds of stuff. And then there's the people who really, the popular view, the tourist view, is the water, the turtles, the surfing. So when it comes to being appropriate, when it comes to being like culturally responsible or culturally responsive, or even like, let's not even go that far, like just aware that there's other things going on beside you there. Are you guys familiar? I mean, are you familiar with the first and how surfing is tied to the island?
Okay, so
Kenani, like, let's go. Okay, let's go.
Right. So Hawaii. Okay, so there's actually two types of surfing now. So the popular one is in the ocean, and then the one that's not so well known is holua sledding. So holua sledding is exactly surfing but on land. It's kind of like bobsledding. But those were cultural practices, and it's so disheartening, right? So Tukanamoku is always like front, because he put Hawaii on the map for surfing, and a lot of surfing was incorporated into movies prior to, like, I'd say the 1920s to 1970s. So that's what really popped off, right? The whole romanticizing Hawaii. But it's super disheartening to open up a magazine and you see a white girl or a white boy, and that's all you see in surfing magazines, because I wouldn't even say Native Hawaiian kids are not promoted. Like, you have maybe 5, out of respect, 5 that are but they're not necessarily, there's so many great surfers out there, but they're not sponsored by Quicksilver or these major companies. They're often just looked past. And you look at the culture, I'd say, of North Shore, right? North Shore, Pupukel. Who can actually afford to live there and use that as their backyard? It ain't Hawaiians. So who's getting those Instagram photos? The residents who live there, who can play in that ocean. And it's like, it's not, that's there in the worldwide scheme of surfing. And they don't understand that it was a form of worship. Yeah, it was a way that we connected with the god Kanaloa. And so is Holua sledding, but you know, it's a lot of underground knowledge that gets displaced by Hollywood, because Hollywood is writing the frame of what Hawaii is. And it's completely different from what surfing right now is. A privilege. It's a fucking privilege. And the community, you're not welcome there, you know. And it's it's disheartening. I hate surfing. I love surfing itself, but not the culture. I hate the surfing culture.
I know, that's why I wanted to speak on it. I wanted you to speak on it particularly because I know it's crap. Like when I see it, I'm like, y'all are like just ridiculous in your privilege. Like, right? Like I'm just like, because I know, I mean, like, I don't know, because I'm not like, you know, I'm not Hawaiian, but I know, you know what I mean? And I knew that the surfing was a spiritual connection. Like I knew it was
not competition. It's not a competition. And now it is a competition. And that's what takes everything away from the intent and the root of what it all started on, you know? Right. And when you, like many things, when you start to compete, it completely changes the definition of that action.
Oh, it becomes individualistic, doesn't it?
Yeah, completely. And so that's why Canans does not like it, because it takes away the complete definition of what it was based on before.
It's appropriation. It's absolutely appropriation. And then when you see then when you talk about like when you start to hear the surfers talk about like the wave talking to him and blah 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 and all this stuff, it's just like, oh my, that like the cultural gaslighting that's involved in that. Like I'm over here with my face like super red, like somebody please tell this dude or this woman, like this person, to stop it, like stop it. And whenever, you know, you see these posters, like you said, it's like these are not Hawaiian people, and there's no Hawaiian anywhere. And even in those posters, there's not Native Hawaiians anywhere. I'm trying to think of a place where I've even seen a picture of an actual Native Hawaiian like Kenani, like actually. No, they're Filipino. They're Japanese. They have the long silky black hair with the flat. Those are not everyone. Those are not Hawaiians. That's not how they look like. I'm sorry. So it's one of those things where I'm like, okay, so this is, they just nobody. There's no one's there. No brown. No nose. No lips. Nothing. You know. And people need to critically think about why. I say this all the time. Why don't you see the people who are indigenous to this land anywhere? Ask yourself, why are they gone? And try to not participate in that. You know, you know what I mean? It's like, it's very simple. Look around. 1 to 10, 1 Native Hawaiian to 10 tourists.
One local, not even Hawaiian.
Okay.
One local. That's even scarier.
That's what I'm saying. So, look, I don't know why I give myself like an hour or 45 minutes, because when it comes to cultural appropriation, when it comes to colonization, when it comes to land being stolen and then re-gifted back, where they make you pay for it, like that kind of stuff gets me like on tangents where I just sound like a crazy person, because I'm just like, oh, and then, like, you know, I just keep going. So you have to excuse me because I get work.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it so much.
Oh, good. I'm glad, because I see, like I said, in my multicultural lens, whether it may be appropriate or not, I look for other brown and Black people, and that's where I feel my core is, right? And that's how I move about the world. I'm Black and brown everywhere. You know what I mean? And that's who my people are, no matter where we are. Like, that's who my people are. So I'm trying to figure out how we can all live better, right? Like, I don't want to go to Hawaii and the highest unhoused population is the local. Like, are you kidding? I'm not buying a house there. Like, why would I do that unless I'm passing it over? You know what I mean? Unless I'm gonna purchase some land to make sure a damn yoga retreat doesn't get it, and then just pass it over or something. I swear to God, it's a hot spot for me, y'all. I'm not kidding. So, I don't know. I just wish that people would think with more aloha. I wish they would.
Absolutely. Yeah, that I think that you hit it on the nail, in that it is a way of life, and a lot of people are not privileged to be raised in a type of culture like this. I am so blessed to have friends like Kenani, to be able to share our values together, and to encourage one another to continue on that path, because it's so easy to get derailed with all of the negative shit that goes on, and like, so I guess for my question is, what can we continue to do, us three women, to progressing towards something that we want to all see people practicing, living?
Look, for me,
Yeah,
this is a great way to wrap the show.
right.
The process of healing is long and ugly, and I want to empower and give as much courage as I can for everybody to face it, right? And as everyone's facing that empowerment, because empowerment is not free, right? It doesn't. It comes with the pain and the struggle. But if you face it, the next step for that is that all of us understand kindness and empathy to the people who are actually working, right? That is what I wish. I wish we could get there. That's what I'm trying to teach. That's what I'm teaching, is the courage to stand up and face what's uncomfortable. And that's for everybody, so that we can grow.
I love that.
Yes. Thank you both for your time and your thoughts, and sharing this space for me to express my as well, and a lot. And I love this reciprocal relationship, because it definitely feeds my soul and then helps me to like push it on. So mahalo.
Oh, mahalo. You guys, I'm just so happy that we did this, and I'm happy that we know each other, because seriously, if you guys come mainland anytime this way, let me know. And I'll be like, I just want to like hug. I've already hugged Charne, but Kenani, I like want to, do that. And yes, there we go. I hope you all very well. I hope wellness to both of you, and just solidarity. I want you to feel it, because I'm here. I know you guys are doing the good work in Hawaii. I'm doing the good work here in Oregon. And so let's just know that there's synergy in all of that. And so, so more power to you all. Thank you so much for being on my show.
Mahalo for having us.
Yes, mahalo for being here. Okay, and we are gonna wrap it, unless you guys have any other thing you want to say before we go.
I just think that it all begins with our self-healing, like you said, Aisha. And when we do get to that point, compassion, empathy, and sympathy are what will lead us to our higher consciousness of being one together. So,
amen.
I'm excited. Let's do this.
All right, Charne and Kenani, I'm going to stop the recording, and then we'll say bye to everyone. Bye. Thank you for listening.
Bye, aloha.
Aloha. Come again next week, where I'm going to have a guest who is LGBTQ, and we are going to talk about the commercialization of Pride Month and how they feel about that. All right. Talk to y'all next week. Bye. Now, if I could just learn how to stop this on time.